Welcome, everyone, to another Twitter Spaces hosted by Morningstar Ventures. Our guest today is Ethan, aka Tabasco, who is the head of developer relations at Particle Network, which is a modular layer 1 blockchain solution focusing on chain abstraction. For those of you who are new here, I'm your host, actually. Don't have a co-host today, Njani, and I'm part of the content team at Morningstar Ventures. So before we begin, this session is recorded and will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and basically anywhere where you listen to your podcasts early next week. And also during the session, if any of the audience members have a question for Ethan, please feel free to either put them in the comments section of this Twitter Spaces or request to speak, and then we will let you ask your question live. All right, so now over to you, Ethan. Welcome back to our Twitter Spaces. It's great to have you on the Twitter Spaces again and actually have a one-on-one conversation with you so that we can all get to know you a little bit better, as well as Particle Network. So with that being said, let's start with an introduction. So Ethan, you actually recently posted about how you got started in crypto, actually at a very young age, and also that you are 18 years old, which is really impressive. So walk us through that a bit, and also could you tell us who you are and how your journey basically got you to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad to be back on the spaces. I think last one that I was on it was about AI or something like that with Kip and a few others. So that was an interesting conversation. I think we were early to that topic. It's grown quite a bit since then. But yeah, I'm excited for the conversation today. I think there's a lot of things to unpack, especially around chain abstraction and particle. And to get started with my side of things, yeah, I'm glad that you guys saw that post. It was just a random thread that I decided to write because I realized that most people didn't know that I was 18. But I actually started in this space full time in crypto, working for an RPC provider when I was 16. And so it's not that interesting of a story, but essentially the pandemic hit and I basically just entered my freshman year of high school. And because there's a pandemic, I was doing remote high school. And I enjoyed that a lot more than in-person high school. I've just never really been a fan of going to school and doing all that kind of stuff. So I was cool with the remote stuff, and I wanted to keep doing that. So once the pandemic ended, basically my parents and I, we had a deal, which was that you can keep doing remote high school if you go and you get a job. And so I was okay with that because the justification was that I can't just sit on my computer all day and, do nothing and never go outside. So I need something to keep me, engaged. And so I got a job working at, for those of you that are in the US, in some parts of the US, at least, a discount tire. If you don't know what it is, it's like a very quick, low quality tire shop that's in a lot, kind of Midwest and stuff like that. And so I started working there right when I turned 16. I worked there for 2 or 3 months and I hated it. I was miserable doing that because I'm not I just that whole type of job is just not something that I particularly enjoy doing. I mean, you're standing up and you're hauling tires around and wheels for, 7 or 8 hours at a time. It's just, it's a lot. And so you're getting paid $15 an hour, which for me was a decent amount, but I just, it just wasn't what I enjoyed doing. I dreaded doing it. And so during that time, basically when I was 15, before all that, I had started doing some crypto exploration. I bought some Dogecoin and I started writing my own software in the industry. And eventually, right before I turned 16 and I got that job, I had started growing my own application. That application was called Amity DeFi. Essentially, it was just an app that let you do transactions on chain through Discord, kind of like how a lot of Telegram bots work today. I did that, but on Discord a few years back, and it grew to a decent size. And so I was like, okay, well, I've been moderately successful in building some software for Web3. Why don't I try to get a job in this space? And so I applied everywhere, and eventually I got very lucky, and I got a very entry level position doing developer relations at an RPC provider called ChainStack. and I worked there for, I think I was there for about a year before I ended up moving from developer relations to leading their developer relations team. And then I eventually did that for another 4 or 5 months. And then I joined Particle, I think about maybe a year and a half, maybe a little bit less than a year and a half ago. I joined Particle. And so now at Particle, I lead developer relations over here, but it's evolved past that to the point where now I do a lot of different things, especially around marketing and product research and stuff like that. And so basically my job is that I bull post chain abstraction a lot on Twitter, and I talk about chain abstraction constantly. And I do a lot of talks and panels at events and podcasts about, why I think chain abstraction is important. And so I think that's what we're talking about today, and I'm pretty excited for it. So that's a little bit about myself and my background.
Nice. And you said at the beginning it's not an interesting story, but I do find it quite interesting going from, like a brick and mortar tire store to then becoming the head of developer relations at Particle Network, which is preaching one of the biggest narratives in crypto, obviously. But before we dive into Particle Network and a little bit more about, what it means to be a developer, what it means to be in the developer relations side of things. So you're from the US, right?
Yep. Yeah. I grew up in Texas, and I live in Colorado.
Yeah. So I was actually, you're the first US guest we've had since the election. So I'm a bit curious about what your thoughts are on that, if you don't mind sharing. But also on top of that, I mean, we can't help but mention that Bitcoin is now at its all-time high. I'm just like refreshing coin market cap at the moment, and it's at 97K. What is your reaction, with all of this, and how do you think it's actually going to shape the next couple of months, and on top of that, how will it impact you and also Particle Network?
Yeah, it's a great question. Living in the US, like I said, I grew up in Texas, and I live in Denver, actually, in Colorado. And so the election was, just beyond crypto, the election in the US was a big point of contention with a lot of people, and was, there's a lot of, people weren't really sure what was going to happen. And so there was just a lot of tension. But of course, to be honest, I didn't vote for Trump, actually. I live in Colorado. It's a very blue state. And so I didn't vote for him. And this is the first election that I could vote in because I just turned 18. But
True.
him winning, I was not disappointed about. I was like, I would technically prefer that, I didn't vote for him, but the fact that he won was still a relatively positive thing for me, because I think for the crypto industry, it's better that he won.
Yeah.
In terms of for the whole country, that's a whole debate that everybody could have. But I think for Web3 specifically, him winning is way better. And so we've already seen the effects of that in the price of Bitcoin. Immediately after he won, we saw big market effects. And now, we're seeing Bitcoin almost at $100,000, which is insane. Just, 3 or 4 years ago, we're looking at Bitcoin like
16.
sub $20,000.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that it's grown this much is insane. And I think his presidency is going to allow, especially with the deregulation, things of that nature, is going to allow not only Bitcoin, but Web3 overall to really thrive over the next 4 years. And so I'm very optimistic, actually. I think that, while the US is, most people in CT, I don't know about most people, but a good chunk of CT is not in the US. Still, the regulatory landscape over here and the political landscape deeply impacts not only price impact, but also just kind of like how easy it is to build a startup and to launch a token and things of that nature. And so I think that him winning was a net positive so far that we've seen for the market in that Particle. Of course, we are not a US based company. We only have 2 people in the US. It's myself and we have a BD guy in New York. But still, the regulatory landscape affects us to some degree. We will launch a token. And so that, especially when it comes to things that are related to the US and even just like the market landscape, that's very important to us. But also, I think that just the sentiment of the space, we've had an anticipated token launch for a long time, and it just hasn't really been the right time for a while because the market hasn't been doing very good. I still think that we are probably in a state of limbo right now, where infrastructure TGs are probably not the best time for it. But I think overall we're getting to a market now where we think that we are set up to succeed not only on the market front, but also from a product adoption standpoint. I think more consumers are getting into the space, even just over the past month. There's more attention on crypto, and there's more attention on potentially the products that we're building and the things that we're bringing to the ecosystem. And so I think we are. I posted a tweet about this earlier tonight, or like 5 or 6 hours ago. And what I said was, $100,000 Bitcoin, alt VMs, chain abstraction, app chains, retail interest, product market fit use cases. 2025 is going to be insane. And I really do believe this. I think that going into next year, it's probably going to be one of the strongest for crypto, because of the political and regulations landscape, and also just the momentum that we built up. So I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, I saw that post. It was a good one, and that's also why I wanted to ask you this first question off the bat. I'm also really looking for 2025. I feel like everyone is just so hyped up now, and it's just really positive to be on Twitter again. I remember I joined actually during the bear market, and I was like, "What is this? Why is everyone so sad?" But yeah, it's good to be in a happy place now. So let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit more about particle network and also, of course, about chain abstraction. Let's talk about chain abstraction more from a holistic point of view. So, you've said it as well in a couple of your posts, and also a particle network on your communications have done that as well. But so chain abstraction has obviously been since February like a driving narrative in the crypto space, and also somewhat buzzword. What do you think is actually really behind this, and why is it so important right now?
Yeah, I think you made an interesting point, which is that it's a buzzword. It absolutely is. So chain abstraction, still, I think we made progress on this, but still, if you ask, 100 different people what is chain abstraction, you're going to get relatively different answers. In a lot of cases, this is a term that is used as a buzzword. It's used to kind of refer to some loose ideas, but when it comes down to it, and actually what we're trying to be building here, the idea behind chain abstraction is very simple. It is first identifying a problem that we have within the ecosystem. That problem is the fact that fragmentation from a user experience level is continuing to get worse and worse, especially within Ethereum as we scale and we move down the roll-up centric thesis. And so we add more and more chains to the ecosystem, and so UX gets progressively more fragmented. As a user, I need to interact with more bridges, and just the ecosystem becomes very siloed in nature. This is a problem because it means that the barrier to entry for users is high, and it also means that just the general experience feels very there's no actual flow to it. It feels what it is. It feels fragmented, and so chain abstraction is a response to that problem that has been getting worse. Specifically a response addressing the user experience. There are many technologies that are solving for the actual underlying interoperability, like ag layer and stuff like that. But chain abstraction is specifically looking at the user experience ramifications of fragmentation and scaling through kind of isolated block space. And so what it does to solve that problem, so it's identifying that problem, and its solution is basically saying, okay, well, a user should be able to go to an application and use that application without needing to know where that application is built. So if I have balances on Arbitrum, Base, and Avalanche, for example, those balances as a user should feel like the same balance. So if I have 5 USDC on Avalanche, 5 on Polygon, and 5 on Arbitrum, as a user, that should feel like 15 USDC that I can go and I can use wherever I want on any application without needing to bridge. And so it's effectively removing the user from the need to do two things. Number one is that they don't need to actually know what chains that the applications they're using are built on. Number two is they don't need to actually manually interact with bridges. And so it makes the ecosystem feel much more like everything's just built on one chain, right? If you go and use Solana, that kind of experience is kind of what we're gunning for with the entirety of Web3, where you just go and use applications, you have your balance, and it just works, right? There's no need to actually manage that third degree, which is the specific chain that's being used. And so chain abstraction is just the implementation of that thesis. It's the enablement of users to go and use any application without bridging, without managing where their funds are, and they just have a balance and they use apps. This is kind of the idea. It feels like a very natural user experience, but this hasn't really been possible up until recently. You have a lot of things that have progressed alongside chain abstraction, like intents, which some of you guys might be familiar with, account abstraction, stuff like that, which has allowed chain abstraction to actually be possible from a user experience level. And of course, as fragmentation gets worse, it becomes more and more relevant. And so this idea and the solution is basically what not only Particle is building, but also numerous other organizations in the space are building. You have Cluster and Socket and Orb Labs and Zion and all these different organizations which have identified the same problem that we have and are building solutions for it. And so this is the idea behind chain abstraction. It is just simply the ability to use applications without bridging, without knowing what chains that they're on.
Yeah, and so from a particle network perspective, I mean, what is your approach to it? What features and tools are you actually building to provide users this this abstraction?
Yeah, so we built something called universal accounts. Universal accounts we originally announced it back in, I think it was February. And so this term you might see frequently even beyond just Particle. The idea behind a universal account is very simple. It is the embodiment of sort of what I just mentioned, which is that you have a single account, right? A single address that can hold balances. And those balances can be located anywhere. So I can have balances fragmented across, any number of EVM chains, Base, Arbitrum, Polygon and Avalanche and anything like that. Maybe even non-EVM chains like Solana, and I can have assets anywhere that act as if they're all on a single chain. So that the account acts as if they're all on, Ethereum or something like that in terms of user experience, but my actual assets can be fragmented wherever I want. So I can have an account where, I deposit on Base and I want to go do a transaction on Polygon, and I have assets on both chains and I want to go do something on Arbitrum, and it uses assets from both of those chains. And so universal accounts are just basically coordinated smart accounts. So there are smart accounts which you can have assets within, and those assets are automatically bridged across chains to fund transactions. And so we can go back to the example that I gave a moment ago, which is that I have 5 USDC on Arbitrum, Polygon, and Avalanche. So I have 15 USDC. In that example, let's say that I want to go to Ethereum and I want to buy an NFT worth 15 USDC. Typically, with a normal account, I need to go and bridge all those funds over to Ethereum and then buy the NFT. With a universal account, the fact that those funds are on those 3 different chains is actually irrelevant to the user. All they see is, okay, I have 15 USDC. They don't care that this is on 3 different chains. All they know is I have sufficient balance. They click buy on the NFT on Ethereum and it happens for them. In the background, we're doing all these bridging operations and very complicated technical things to allow that to happen. But in essence, a universal account is just a unique account that allows users to maintain a single balance across the entire ecosystem. Now, chain abstraction is not just that. Chain abstraction is very multifaceted. So typically, without going too deep into it, when you look at chain abstraction, when you look at solutions within it, typically chain abstraction can be seen as being composed of 3 different layers. So the first layer is what you could call application level chain abstraction. So application level chain abstraction, or sometimes always referred to as orchestration. This basically means SDKs that developers can use to kind of create applications that can do things on multiple different chains simultaneously, right? So if I want to create an application that does transactions on Polygon and Base and all these different things in one signature, then application level chain abstraction allows me to build those types of applications. So it's more developer facing. Beneath that, you have account level chain abstraction. So it's chain abstraction applied to user accounts, allowing them to maintain a single balance across all chains. That's the position that Particle fits within. Particle is kind of in between the stack at what you can call account level chain abstraction. At the very bottom of the stack, you have blockchain level chain abstraction. This is going to be things like Polygon Ag Layer, Optimism Superchain, even things like NodeKit, if you guys have ever heard of them. These are intrinsic interoperability protocols that allow chains to share things like bridges or security features, stuff like that. It basically allows for that native interoperability. That's also quite low level. It's more on the actual protocol level. And so you have developer-facing chain abstraction, you have user-facing chain abstraction, and you have protocol level abstraction or interoperability. And so Particle is in the middle of that stack with account level chain abstraction via universal accounts. So that's kind of how it works and kind of the position that we occupy.
Yeah, nice. And how has the adoption been going for universal accounts? Are there some stats or numbers that you can share with us?
Yeah, we've been building universal accounts now for I guess almost a year. We're coming up on a year now. And so we have not released the SDKs or any sort of implementation just yet. We do have some early demos that we've shared with a few kind of key individuals in this space, but nothing launched just yet. And so most usages of universal accounts have been internal and just kind of some development things. But what we're excited for is basically next week, we're going to be launching the first app that we built using universal accounts. So universal accounts are fundamentally an infrastructure. It's something that you can use to build wallets or applications or things like that give users that kind of unified account, right? So what we did at Particle was that we were like, okay, well, we want to launch universal accounts, but what we didn't want to do was just kind of launch an SDK or something like that and then hope that people will use it. That's fine, but I don't see that as a very efficient way to gain adoption for like a smart account in this case, or an SDK. And so what we decided to do was actually say, okay, well, like, look, we've built this great infrastructure, right? We built this account that gives you a unified balance. What should we do with it, right? Our first question was like, okay, like, what do we build with this now, right? We've created this great thing. We want to actually make something with it. And so what we're going to be doing first is next week launching actually like an application that we built in-house using universal accounts. So if you guys go to my Twitter, we haven't really talked much about it on our main account, but I posted like a video of me doing something on that application. It's pretty interesting. Basically on this application, what I did is I bought a token on Solana, and I paid for that token using funds on like Polygon and Arbitrum and Base and Avalanche and so on. It was an insane transaction. It's more than I can even verbalize. So if you go and you watch that video, then you might see what I'm talking about. But anyways, that application, that first implementation of universal accounts is going to go live next week. That'll be very quickly followed by our SDKs for universal accounts. And so that's when it's going to be available to the public. We've basically finished it. We're just getting ready to actually do the full launch now. And we're pretty confident about the adoption that we're going to see. I think it addresses a real problem. It's a great product. Infrastructurally, it works really well. And so, I'm pretty confident. I think it's going to be dope.
Yeah, stay tuned. We'll keep an eye out on your Twitter and also Particle Network's Twitter. I wanted to go back actually to universal accounts and also just talking about, the whole notion of chain abstraction. You, in the article that you wrote, I'm not sure if it was an article or a long Twitter post, but it was very interesting. Nevertheless, you mentioned that there is sometimes a common criticism about people who argue against abstraction and say that they do want to know, where, which chain they're on, and that they feel like it's a loss of control. What are your thoughts around that? Can you expand a bit on this point?
So whenever you pitch chain abstraction to people, typically there's going to be one of two reactions. The first is kind of the more common reaction that we get, which is, okay, wow, that's great. That's a killer user experience. I think users and even existing users want that. The second reaction that I've seen to be also increasingly more common is the pushback that, like, hold on, you're taking away my ability to like know what chains I'm using, which to some degree it's an abstraction, right? And so by default, my experience is abstracted to the degree where I don't even really know like where my assets are by default, or what chains the applications I'm interacting with are built on. I'm just using apps, right? And so I understand the criticism, which is that, well, I want to know what chains I'm on, and I want to know what chains the apps I'm using are on, because chains, especially L2s, have different like security implications, right? Some chains are very centralized. Maybe you don't want to have your assets there. Maybe you don't want to hold tokens there. Maybe you don't want to use applications on these different chains.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
And so people are worried about losing that control and feeling like, they're kind of going in blind, and that they don't have the ability to make decisions based on, security assessment of the chains that they're using. They have to just kind of like, that information is essentially removed from them. I would consider this a misconception. I think that fundamentally they're right in that this is the goal of chain abstraction, is to remove that information from you. But the caveat here is that that's just the default experience. So chain abstraction is assuming that new users don't want that, like, are not going to take the time to go and assess like the centralization risks of the different L2s that they're using. This is a ridiculous notion that normal people care about this in any regard. They don't. They just want to use an application. They're not going to sit around and think, oh, is this application built on Arbitrum or on Base? And what are the sequencer risks of this chain over the other? Like, this is a very nerdy thing that like a small group of people on CT want to do, but they should be able to do that. I don't think that we need to take that away from them. And so the thing about chain abstraction is that the default experience is completely abstracted to the point where most people are not going to know what chains that they're using, where they hold balances. They're going to use a wallet, they're going to use an application, and that's going to be the end of it. They're not going to have any information about that third degree, which is a chain. But as advanced users, that small group of people that do want that information, want to act upon that information about the chains that they're using, chain abstraction is not removing that from them. They can still go and see, okay, this application is built on this chain, or the transaction that I'm doing are on these different chains, or my assets are held here. And they can adjust accordingly. They can go and use whatever they want to, that isn't on the chains that they want to avoid or whatever. Like they retain full sovereignty and control over their own assets and over their own on-chain activity. Chain abstraction is not the removal of any control. It's the removal of information by default for newer users and for people that don't want to manage that information. And so and actually it was interesting. I was in Bangkok last week, and there was this panel of very deeply technical researchers from the intent space. Anoma and Kalani, and if you guys have heard of them, these are somewhat niche names, but they one of the Anoma guys was talking about how they think that every user should have access to the chains that they're interacting with, and every user is going to want to make decisions based on the security assumptions of different chains. And the moderator called out to me in the audience and he said, "Hey, can you respond to this? Because this is a talking point that I talk about a lot." And my response was like, well, this is the idea that any sort of consumer actually cares about the security assumptions and is willing to themselves assess that is just a very sheltered view. This is not reality. People are just going to use whatever's easiest for them. But what we can do is make sure that what they are using is secure. And so there's things that we can do like wallet level optimizations or whatever to make sure that they're interacting with secure applications and secure chains. But the thing here is users themselves don't want to do this and don't want to manage this information. And so the fact that we think that people are going to want to do this and that we're going to that we think that we can force people to do this is ridiculous. And it's a barrier for onboarding. And so chain abstraction is just making it simple. It's making it so that you don't need to do that by default. But for kind of those niche people that still want to do it, they can do it if they want to. It's just that normal users don't need to.
100% agree. I also think, that is probably why chain abstraction has become such a huge narrative, is because with, regulatory clarity and also with everything going on in the market at the moment, newer people are coming into crypto and they need easy solutions. Like with the days of the crypto native hardcore tech guys are a little bit, they're leaving us behind, and now we have more of the normies coming in who need easy solutions. So yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. The easier the UX, the better it will be for the user, and I think that's also where we're going to see more adoption come on. I wanted to shift actually from the user to the developer side. So what would you say for the developers who are, just getting started to explore chain abstraction? What advice would you actually would you give to them in terms of how to implement it in their projects, and also thinking of particle network as an infrastructure?
So yeah, it's a good question. My immediate response would be that chain abstraction is still very early. It's been a narrative for a long time. It's been a very big narrative, and people are rightfully excited about it. But it's still materializing. And so there honestly are not a whole lot of ways to actually implement chain abstraction in a way that's complete today. The one thing I will say is from Particle's perspective, you will be able to implement universal accounts, which will give you the majority of the chain abstraction experience for your users, ideally by the end of this year. And so, like I said, we're releasing that first product next week, and then we're going to follow that with the SDKs quite soon. In the meantime, though, there's plenty of protocols that are starting to ship developer-facing products. Like Biconomy is doing some chain abstraction stuff pretty recently, which is interesting. So I'd recommend looking into them. You have Agoric on the Cosmos side. You have Socket, which does some nice stuff. Near, of course, does chain signatures. And so these are, I would think very few of these are full chain abstraction, but they will get you to the point where I think you're going to be set up pretty well for that type of future, the kind of the chain abstracted future. If you want to start immediately, then yeah, Biconomy, Socket, Agoric, these guys are good choices to kick off with. From our side, though, I will tell you that universal accounts and allowing your application to be chain abstracted with universal accounts is going to be very simple. I mean, it's going to basically take 5 lines of code. If you're familiar with how to implement smart accounts within your app, then you can implement universal accounts. It's going to be an incredibly simple flow. If you've used our SDKs before, then you know that we tend to make things very simple for developers. And so as soon as we launch those SDKs, I think that you're going to find it pretty refreshing. It's going to take you, I think, no more than maybe 30 minutes to get the SDK set up, get it configured, and basically make your application chain abstracted. It's just that you might need to wait at least maybe another 1 to 2 months until that does go live. As soon as we kind of launch this product and do a few things on that side, then the SDKs are next. And so that will come. In the meantime, if you do want to start building with chain abstraction, then start with some of those other providers, and they can give you a good chunk of the experience. And then once we launch universal accounts, it'll be pretty complementary. And I think people are going to find it pretty solid.
Nice. Also a easy and seamless experience for developers, not just for users, what you're creating. So that's great. And we're almost at the end of our session, actually. I feel like they always pass by so quickly. It's been really great talking to you, getting to know you better, getting to know Particle Network better as well. But to round it off, so we obviously have been talking a lot about the top narrative, chain abstraction. You also said that it is, somewhat a buzzword. But another narrative and also buzzword is, of course, meme coins, right? And it's been at the top of most headlines at the moment with, also things like Peanut coming up lately. Do you feel like it's stealing the attention a little bit from the infra and chain abstraction narratives, and what's your thought on this whole meme coin boom for the wider industry?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and my personal opinions about meme coins have changed a lot over the past year. I started being very anti meme coin, and I'm still it's taking me a little bit of time to like get out of that mindset a little bit.
Interesting, because you kind of started with Doge, no?
I did actually.
Yeah.
Dogecoin was what got me into the space. That's what kind of piqued my interest, because I was like, oh, this coin's going up. But as soon as I kind of like got past like the Doge hype phase of my kind of journey in crypto, what I realized is that, well, hold on, like Web3 has a lot more potential than just like speculation, and we can do some great things with this. Like really, for me, the thing that has always driven a lot of my interest in the space has been the idea of having complete sovereignty over your finances and your own data and your like virtual identity. This is something that's only possible in Web3, and that is just a massive change over the existing financial and data ecosystems that we have. I mean, it's insane. And so I've always advocated for like deeper use cases like that. But especially over the past year, I've realized that speculation is really what has driven Web3 to the point that it's at today. If there wasn't a price attached to Bitcoin, I think it would have remained an academic niche and never would have really grew. The fact that Web3 is speculative is what's brought in a lot of retail. It's what's brought in a lot of users. It's what brought me into the space. It's what Dogecoin speculation, the growth of that meme coin is. I would never be in Web3. I would not be in this position that I'm in today if it weren't for that coin gaining a lot of traction and me finding interest in that. And so, my opinion on it's been changing over time. And I think I'm at a point now where the general thesis that I have on meme coins is that I think they're good for the people that understand the risks and that want to play around with them. And I mean, I think it's like right now, to be honest, speculation is Web3's greatest use case. And this has been clear. This has been proven that this is just like the best utilization of Web3 at the moment. Whether or not that will remain in 10 years, I don't know. But I think right now, speculation is what brings in users, it's what brings in liquidity. It's what grows the whole ecosystem. And so I support it. I mean, I think, like I said, I believe in Web3 as a vision and as a technology beyond speculation, but I think speculation is a powerful means to growing it. In relation to usurping chain abstraction, I don't think it does necessarily. I see chain abstraction as, and really infrastructure overall, as first of all, a different segment of people that find it interesting. Like, I think the ideal feature for chain abstraction is that, if chain abstraction is really successful as a narrative, then it will no longer be a narrative, because just the default experience that you have is chain abstracted. Like, for example,
right, it will just be like norm.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there's not like a touchscreen narrative, because it's just like, I mean, it's a pretty normal thing. Like your phone is touchscreen. Many laptops are like, there's no narrative around touchscreen. So it's just like, eventually becomes the norm, and that's what you're used to. But the fact that it's a narrative right now, it's a narrative in a niche group of like enthusiasts and infrastructure guys and academics that like this idea. For users, as a user, I shouldn't even know that I'm using a chain abstracted product. It's just a good product that I'm using. And so I think chain abstraction has a potential to really support any type of application, especially like, meme coins and trading. And, over time, I've been writing more about this. And I did a keynote. I dedicated my keynote. We have an event called Abstract Summit that we run. And I did a keynote in Bangkok about where I think chain abstraction is going to first affect. And that keynote was all about how I actually do think that chain abstraction's first frontier for actually making an impact on the industry is going to be trading. It's going to be meme coins and stuff like that, because it's a natural progression of things. It's like meme coins and trading and speculation is the biggest vertical in Web3. It's what has the most value. It's what has the most users, has the most volume. And so chain abstraction actually helps a lot with that vertical. And so it only makes sense to me that that's going to be the first frontier for the narrative, and for chain abstraction is going to be impacting that vertical. And so the app that I mentioned earlier that we're starting to build actually kind of plays into this idea a little bit. And so if you guys go to my profile and kind of look at that GIF, you can see actually in the video that I posted a few hours ago, I actually bought a meme coin on Solana using all of those abstracted balances from the different chains. And so I think the narratives are very compatible, and chain abstraction is not opinionated about what it actually allows to be user-friendly. It makes everything Web3 user-friendly. And I think speculation being the biggest use case in Web3 is obviously a part of that. And so, I think it's a good thing. And from the chain abstraction perspective, I think it's going to be honest, be a catalyst that is going to allow the narrative and allow the technology to really be adopted once people realize how powerful it is in a primitive like trading.
It's a really interesting thesis, the trading and chain abstraction one. And yeah, I feel like chain abstraction is like everyone's best friend at the end of the day. And just speaking, beyond meme coins and chain abstraction, any other, narratives or trends that you think are really going to emerge in this upcoming cycle?
Yeah, I think, of course, AI has been like the big trend, and, we had a space about that a little while back. I've done some talks about that, and I've done some panels about AI, and I tend to be a little bit skeptical of the current ways that AI has been used in Web3. But I think it has a lot of potential. Like, I think that there's immense potential for AI to make Web3 significantly more efficient, to make markets more efficient, to make user experiences better. I think that there's a lot of potential there that I'm excited about. I think that things like we're starting to see a big adoption of like payment systems, like what is it called? It's like PayLink or something like that in the Slush ecosystem. I think really payments are probably going to be, and I submitted a patent a few years ago for payments infrastructure on Web3. And so that's also a vertical that I've always historically been a big fan of, tying back around to like the thesis around financial sovereignty. I think that that fits perfectly with sovereign decentralized payment systems. And so I think that is also starting to grow a lot as a vertical in the space. I think the one that we're going to see the most activity around is going to be AI. My hope is that will move into some better use cases than we have today. Like AI agents posting on Twitter is cool, but like my immediate reaction is like, okay, we can do better than some AI that shit posts all day. Like there has to be some more interesting and like actually utility driven use case for this technology than just that. And so
yeah,
I think we'll find it.
We're getting too lazy.
Oh yeah. It's just whatever gets the engagement, which I guess works for now. But to be honest, it all comes back down to the thing where it's like, the fact that like these shitposting AI agents, that brought a lot of attention to the AI vertical. And so I think hopefully that will translate into more meaningful innovation. But I think we're going to see a lot of work there and also in the payments vertical.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think AI definitely is going to take the next years by storm. I'm actually quite interested in the intersection between healthcare and AI. I was listening to a couple podcasts about that. I mean, Web3 aside, but curious to see what's going on there, and maybe even bring in the blockchain as well. Healthcare could benefit from the blockchain, 100%. Before, you already mentioned that you guys are launching an app, and I guess you're also going to be launching a token. But before we go into the last question, I'll let you spill a couple more alphas. We always like to ask our guests if they had 3 tips for builders, creators, anyone in the space. What are those 3 tips?
Oh man, that's difficult. I think the first one that I've found as a builder myself is to have conviction and build things that you genuinely think are interesting from a technological standpoint and from a product standpoint. the one thing that I see a lot of builders getting themselves stuck in is that they chase quick dopamine and like big narratives and things that they think are going to result in very quick like acquisition of wealth. I think that's the way that a lot of people fail in the space, is that people have a very hard time for some reason Web3 thinking long term. And so even like with chain abstraction, for example, when we started building in chain abstraction, there was no narrative. Like we were betting everything on a narrative that didn't really exist. You started to see some life around there. Like there were some organizations building in the space, and you had Connects to Near, which were kind of pushing it a little bit, and Socket kind of getting into it at that point, but it was a tiny narrative. And so, but the reason why we bet everything on it, that we basically put our whole business on this narrative, is because it was a technology that we believed would change the space and that we wanted to build something for. And so we did. If you can do that, you have way more success. I think, for example, if we sat around and just like chased different things and then eventually got into chain abstraction once it started picking up, we would not be in the position that we are today. It's a matter of choosing something that you really do believe in from a technological standpoint and building it. And if you do, and if it's actually a good idea, then it'll reward over time. But it has to be long-term. It can't just be, whatever is giving you the most dopamine right now, you're going to go build it. And as soon as that doesn't pay off, you kind of go and move to the next thing. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is, it's difficult. I think a lot of people in the space waste time with distractions. And so I also posted this the other day, which is that, especially in this market, focus is a very rare trait. Somebody also just said this on Twitter. They said somebody who, and I agree with this 100%. They said that somebody who has fun with what they're doing is always going to outperform somebody who feels an obligation to do it. And this is very true. This is so when I was building the two major things that I built in the space, I wouldn't consider myself not a builder now, but I'm a part of Particle, and so I'm a part of a bigger group of builders to some degree. But when I was first getting into the space, I built two things. I built Amity DeFi, which I talked about earlier, and I built something that I hinted at earlier, which is a patent that I never really ended up kind of releasing anything with. But it was basically a system that I developed where you could authenticate transactions with a private key that you could actually bind to the visual features of your palm print. So it sounds kind of crazy, but you could basically kind of encrypt and derive a private key from biometric features that you have on your hand. And so it was a way to like authenticate basically payments without any sort of device or anything like that. You could like your own like a physical like organic features would be able to pay for things on chain, which was a really interesting idea to me. These were, at the time, were not things that this is just something that I was immensely focused on. Not because I wanted to make money. I was losing money on everything that I've ever built in the space. I lost money on. I was building them because I genuinely thought that they were interesting ideas, and I enjoyed it a lot. And because I had fun doing it, because it was something that I would wake up in the morning, I would say, okay, this is I fixed a problem and I want to like go and do it. I want to spend all day doing this. I would do it. Like I would like wake up, I would do it. I'd go to bed and I'd just do it over and over again until I got to a point where I was satisfied, which is never be satisfied, but that's a different thing. And so I think overall, like those are going to be probably the biggest things. It's hard for me to get a third one out there, but I would say overall, like in my experience,
build with conviction, stay focused, have fun.
There you go. Yeah, that's three. I think those are what I've over my time in the space. That's what I've learned, and I think that's it's hard to find. It sounds easier than it is, but if you can genuinely find something that you have fun with, that you can have conviction about, and that you can be focused on, you will be successsucul. But it's hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, but you found it early, so that's good for you.
I got pretty lucky.
Yeah, I think some people are still finding it. But Ethan, thank you so much. It's been really amazing talking to you, getting to know you better, getting to know chain abstraction better, and also Particle Network. So like you said about the app and also about the TGE, do you have any other alphas that you could share with our listeners? And also, where is the best place for our audience to stay engaged?
Yeah, so I think I shared most of the alpha. We actually haven't we haven't really announced this new product at all. We're going to be doing a teaser probably tomorrow for our main account, but the best teaser that you're going to see basically until next week is going to be the video that I just posted. And so if you guys are interested, you can go over there. Our main account, we usually keep things a little bit more like low key and more vague. And so the teaser that I posted earlier today is literally just a video from the product itself. And so that's probably going to be the most that we're going to release in terms of like actual showcasing until the release. But the release right now, we're looking at Thursday next week. Don't hold me to that. Things happen. And, right now we're mostly waiting on it. Cause like basically, I guess the alpha here is that this app is going to go live on as a website. It's going to go live on the App Store, on the Google Play Store, and as a Telegram mini app. So it's going to be on literally every platform we could find. And so right now, the main thing that we're waiting for, the right reason why it's not live today, is because we're waiting for App Store approval. And so as soon as we have that, we're going to launch it. But it's going to be everywhere. It basically, the point of this app is to allow you to buy and sell any token on any chain, including Solana, without like needing to hold tokens in those chains. And so like literally just deposit, hold assets wherever you want, buy any token anywhere, pay gas with whatever token that you want, instant transactions. I mean, it's insane. The idea of this product is that it truly feels like a centralized exchange, but everything about it is self-custodial. It's completely decentralized. I mean, it's a killer product. The user experience is nothing. It is like, I don't like to oversell things. Sometimes I do a little bit, but I would confidently say like this product there's nothing like it on chain that exists today. The user experience is just 10x. And so I'm really excited to get this released, and we've been working really hard on this, both on universal accounts as well as the implementation through this app. And so, yeah, I mean, keep things going for, you can follow us at Particle Network, at Particle NTWRK, or me at Tabasco Web3. Keep checking out our Twitter, stuff like that. You'll probably see more information about it over the next few days as we get ready for the launch next Thursday. If any of you guys are developers or people that are like deep in the infrastructure space and you do want to give it a try before we release it, you can shoot me a DM. We'll give a few people early access. So if it really interests you, then you can, send me a DM and I should be able to get you access maybe like Monday next week or maybe tomorrow. But other than that, yeah, watch your Twitters at Particle NTWRK, like I said, at Tabasco Web3, and you'll kind of learn more from there.
Very nice. Looking forward to the launch. And yeah, you guys heard it. If any of you are developers, make sure to DM at Tabasco Web3. And that's it actually for our interview. It's been really great to have everyone here. And also, again, a reminder, the recording will come out early next week, along with a written recap of the conversation. We host these Twitter spaces every 2 weeks. We do roundtable discussions with 3 or more guests on a specific topic that's currently trending in the Web3 space. We also host one-on-one interviews, just like we did today, with founders or builders or our portfolio company teams. So stay tuned for more and see you for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Same.